Yeah, the tornado of 1899.
Well, it was just a terrible storm. We went to a circus 7 miles away, and
In New Richmond?
from our
Do
farm.
you remember the circus at all, what that was like?
No, it was a terribly hot day, a close, humid day, and we drove. And my mother we had a long-legged white horse, and that was my mother's driving horse, and we hitched to the buggy, and we drove to that, and we took one of the neighbor girls with us, and after the circus, we came out, and my uncles were there, and they said, well, there's going to be a storm, Mamie, you better not go home. And they didn't want her to go home, but my mother was determined, and she was going home, and she said, come on, let's go, and she got us into the buggy, and we started out. And I remember we had a whip, and I was whipping the horse, and she was driving, and we drove, and that horse was a long-legged one, he could run. And we dropped off the girl, who was a neighbor, and we rushed into the yard, and my father was whistling. He came out, and she said, on hitch this horse, on hitch this. He said, oh, keep your shirt on. And she said, there's a storm coming. Well, he looked up, and he saw there was. So he was scared of storms. He planted, my mother said, he planted a fear of storms in my heart.
She said he planted a fear of storms.
And because I've always been afraid of storms.
Oh.
Yeah, Pop used to come home whenever there's a bad storm. He'd do it. I was hard. So.
Do you remember how the sky looked? Was it that green?
Well, we lived. There was what we call a mound off to the left of our farm, and there was said to be an Indian mound, or Indians buried there. And the storm was coming over that mountain, and it diverted its path and missed our house and went on up to New Richmond, which was sort of like the mountain here, and we were here, and New Richmond was there, and it went up there, so it missed us. And he made us all run to the basement, and we knew it was a bad storm. It was bad enough where we were, but we weren't damaged.
So you all went down into the cellar?
Yeah, that's where we used to go when there was a bad storm. And every time there was, my father saw that we got out. So I think there was about a third of the population killed.
Really?
And my uncles didn't go home. That they had urged my mother to stay, and thought that she did. And they were looking all night for her, they said. But she got home and got us in safe. But
so storm didn't hit your home very badly because of that mound?
Yeah. It diverted it.
It didn't hurt the house too much?
None. No, nothing on our farm was damaged. But there were stories all the way in the track of the storm. And the town itself was just obliterated. More people killed. And some almost whole families were. Everything was dated for the year of the tornado.
Were there quite a bit of...
The year of the cyclone. They call it a cyclone.
Was there quite a bit of rebuilding that went on right after?
Yes, had to be. A lot of freaks. We heard stories of things like a broom being punched through a tree, a trunk.
Oh, yeah?
A few freakish stories of the freakish things that happened from the storm.
Was there any of your family or friends that were killed by that storm?
None. We were all lucky. And none of our close friends, none of our neighbors, and none of our relatives.
After your grandfather's house burned down, did your father and mother start to work building their own home then?
Yeah. I don't know where we lived. About a mile south of where we were, there was 40 acres south that belonged to the McKinleys. We used to call it the back 40. But not on that 40, but near it, there was a house. It was kind of a poor little house, but they moved into that. And it was a mile from the school. I went to school from there. It was a long way. No, I couldn't have gone from. That must have been after. Well, no, I don't know, because my father carried me to school the first day. I don't know when we moved up, and we were living in our new house. Well, we lived anyhow. We moved a mile away from where we had originally lived, in a house that it didn't belong to us. I guess we must have rented it. And in the meantime, they bought an old house, or traded farms some way, so that we got near the school.
So that's the house you pretty much grew up in then?
Isn't that funny? I can't remember. I remember my father carrying me to school, so we were living near the school then, but we lived for a couple of years. We lived for a couple of years in a house a mile away near the lake, and that old lake was a lot of fun. We used to love to go there and play, and we must have lived there 2 or 3 years, and then we
Those
moved.
are the 2 or 3 years right after the house,
Yes,
the old house burned down. Yeah,
it would be, because we were living in what we called our new house. They bought this older house that was near this school and near to where we originally lived, and built additions on it. It had quite a nice house. We had a quite nice house there, and I remember I started school from there.
Is that house still up there? Do you
No,
imagine?
it's been, it was up, lasted a good many years, but it's been torn down and another house built there. And that was a pretty good sized house. We had a kitchen, a nice big dining room, big living room, and we had 6 bedrooms, I think, and a lean-to, what they call a lean-to, a little shed built on the side where they used to cook, move the stove, or cook out there instead of having the hot cook stove going in the kitchen. They had to do all the cooking, and it made the house very hot.
So that's the house that you remember the best, probably.
Yes, it was, because it was new. It's where I first had yes. I lived there almost until I was married. In fact, my wedding was in it. Was in the house?
Yeah. Let's see now. You started off to school from whichever house, but when you started off to grade school, you remember your first day your father carried you there? On his piggyback?
I thought that was nice. He was my father was a very kind, he was a very loving father. He wasn't a bit bossy or dictatorial. My mother did that. But he'd play with us, He'd make us a sled, and when the lake froze over, he would go skating and take us skating. One time he had the 2 of us on a sled, and we got a nice ride, and we got to where the edge. He says, "Well, where's Catherine?" I said, "She fell back away." But he was fun, and he played the fiddle, around the neighborhood for the parties, and
He was sort of easygoing.
a little easy. Oh yeah, my mother said anybody could get the best of him. I can hear your grandmother saying that. Yes, she used to get pretty mad at him because she thought people put things over on him. I don't know that they did so much. He was town treasurer.
She would kind of tease him in that way, sort of.
Oh, she meant it.
Get his goat a little.
She meant it. She thought that people put things over on him.
So was she more ambitious, would you say?
Yes, very. And she was much more private, reserved. She didn't make friends with everybody. My father would, though. He'd talk to everybody. No, she would be on the outs with some of them, to the point where it made it a little difficult for us kids not to play with them.
So you'd be aware that your mother might...
I'd be aware that she didn't like the Murphys, or she didn't like the Weirs.
So their children, maybe you...
She just soon we didn't invite them down to play with us.
What else do you remember that your father did with you and your sisters?
Well, he'd always hitch up the horse for us if we wanted a horse to go somewhere He'd have the horse hitched up and tied to the post outside. We didn't have to hitch up our own horse. I could, if I had to, but if I was really going to need it, he'd have the horse there ready. And he give us, when there are any animals, he'd say, well, now you can have that calf, or you can, that horse. Susie was my horse, always. She was well, I told you about her. She was a poor little rat of a colt that some man owed my father a debt, and he had no money, so he gave him that little colt. So my father said, well, you can have him, Agnes, to play with as she grew up. Well, she turned out to be the most valuable horse in the place. She produced so many colts herself, and she was a nice horse to play with. Could hitch her up or could ride her. We'd have two of us could get on her back to get ride. But he gave me 3 pigs one time, little pigs runts that they couldn't sell, and told me I could have them if I'd take care of them. So he put them in a little pen up at the end of the yard, and well, I tried, but usually the hired man helped me feed them. And when I sold them, I got the money.
Oh.
And I bought myself a set of furs with them, or a muff and a neck piece with the money from these little pigs. And my father, I often wish I was nicer to him.
Because he did so well by you.
Well, he very loved. He wouldn't boss us as far as ever chastising or disciplining us. He never laid a word to us. My mother had to do that.
She was more the disciplinarian.
Oh, yes. Very strict. But she was a good one. She was a real strong person.
So in some ways they made a good team, maybe?
I think so. I often think I know I was more like my father and not my mother. I know now that she did lean to me a little. But my father always went to Catherine, and Catherine was more like my mother. And I used to think, well, there still was a bond between my mother and father, since she liked the one that was like him, and my father liked the one that was like her. Things that's just a little thing in my mind.
And haven't you said that Aunt Catherine's voice reminds you of your mother's voice at the end of her life?
No, I've never said that.
Oh.
But she was very much like her, yeah.
But she reminded you of your
mother. Very much. Grace will tell you that. Catherine was we used to say when we would go in and see Catherine lying there, you'd almost think you were looking at your mother.
Oh, you mean she looked like her?
Oh, she looked like her, and she was like her.
What was your school like when you started off to grade school? Was that a one-room school?
Oh, great, yes. I thought it was great to go to school.
Oh,
I'd cry if I had to stay home.
Oh. Well, what was so great of what...
well, but other kids...
Because it enabled you to get off the...
Sure, on the farm you're lonely. Many a Sunday I sat around there hoping somebody would come and we'd have a visitor. And on weekdays, of course, there's always plenty to do in the way of line of work. But on Sundays, we used to just love to have company. And once in a while somebody would come. And when I got older, I often had company on Sunday. But as a child, Sunday was a lonely day. No, I liked school because, I liked to be with the kids for one thing. And another thing, I was fascinated with school. I always wanted to be a teacher. I always remember, I had one little girl, she was my age, her name was Libby in the neighborhood. She was very, very dull, stupid, she didn't learn very fast. And she never did. I was always held back a little bit because Libby wasn't ready for the next reader. You know, we went by readers, the fourth reader, third reader, and the fourth reader, and so forth. And if they thought Libby wasn't ready, well, they held the class back a while.
So you have to kind of wait for her to catch up.
Yes, or go over it again. Anyhow, So I used to get so impatient with Libby because, being my age, she was always in my class. And she couldn't get things. And I remember we used to learn with a chart. Have you ever seen the old charts like we used to have? Well, they're on a tall thing, and you turn the big sheet over as you go along.
A flip chart?
Yeah, a flip chart, that's right. And the first one was about a cat and a hat and all that. Well, that was duck soup, but Libby couldn't get it. And one time the teacher was trying to get Libby to, we had to sit quiet while Libby was reciting, and Libby couldn't get it, so I took the pointer and showed it to her before I knew what I was doing. I was so impatient with Libby. Well, then it came to the 8th grade when I went to write for the morning I was to go for my diploma. We used to have to write for our high school, for our grade school diplomas.
Oh.
So I had to go to town and write papers for two Saturdays.
Oh, not to school, but
to a place where the county superintendent was giving the examination.
By the way, that's just what my other grandmother, the same assistant.
Yes.
She talked about the county superintendent's office. Yeah.
Well, that was important. And anyhow, morning came, and Libby was supposed to write too, but not much hope of her ever getting through. But anyhow, her mother was a widow, and there was nobody to help her with this, so the neighbors tried to be good to Libby's mother. But when we were ready to going, we didn't have phones those days. I guess we didn't. Anyhow, we had to take Libby. And my mother was provoked because she had to take Libby. It was raining, too.
Oh.
And we had to drive 7 miles in the rain. Well, poor Libby did pass, of course. And she never did get very far. I passed. I got through all right.
Would you have to pass that exam in order to go on to high school then? I assume.
Yeah. They wouldn't take you in high school unless you had passed.
Did you start into high school the next year then?
Oh, yes.
And you boarded in town?
Yes.
You?
We had, my mother and father had friends, I guess, through the church in the town. And they had a house, and they had 2 girls our age, Catherine's and mine. So we used to play with them. And so when it came time looking for a place to live, they took me, and I often think they didn't make much money on me because I could eat a lot. But anyhow, I had a good year. It was fun being with the 2 girls, They went to, one of them, I think they were both in high school too. So the next year, Catherine was ready to go. So from that time on, we always hired a room and kept house together.
Lived together. And you would stay in through high school, you would stay through the week in this home and then go home for the weekends?
They always came for us on Friday evening.
Your father would come in?
Or mother. Yes. And then there was a train from Boardman, our little station, and once in a while they would take us to the Boardman, which was 2 miles to drive, and the train to New Richmond was, I guess, 7 or 8 miles, and we'd ride the train up to New Richmond. And that was one way we had of getting transportation. The train was quite important in our lives. We didn't have much use of it, but it was quite important.
In so far as it would, how so?
We could go some places. We could go to Stanton, where my grandmother lived. Well, it was 2 miles from our place to the depot at Boardman, and then we rode to Stanton, which was the second station. We stopped at New Richmond, and the next station was Stanton, where my grandmother lived. And she would have to come her 2 or 3 miles to get us at Stanton. So there was an awful lot of buggy riding.
Say, how were the roads back then? Were they all dirt roads?
Oh, yes.
Dirt.
Once in a while, they began to put sand on. My uncle Eddie Hogan was the road commissioner when they began to fix roads and improve them. So he used to be very busy as a road commissioner and was pretty good at it, I guess. But we got gravel roads, I guess. They were mud otherwise. And after rain, they're terrible traveling.
When you were in high school, did you go around to did you have different teachers for each subject? Or?
Yes.
So you'd move around during the day to different...
Yes, we have our Latin teacher, our mathematics teacher, our English teacher. Well, we had at least 4 classes a day. I had the Latin.
And you were still fascinated with school then? You still enjoyed
it? I still loved it.
Was it learning something new about it? Just learning new things?
Oh, yeah, sure. Learning something. And, again, the social life, social contacts meant a lot to me. The country can be a lonely place.
Sure, off on your own farm there?
Yes. Well, the other farm was 80 rods, what we call rods from us. And there were farms every few rods down the road, but it was still a little distance.
But nothing like a city.
Oh, no. No, nothing like a city.
What was the educational approach like? Did you do a lot of memorizing or
yes,
memorizing poems?
Yes. Your mother probably could repeat a lot of the same ones that we learned. Like the snow had begun in the gloaming and busily all the night, and then the Hiawatha, and there were certain standard poems that we had to learn. In arithmetic, we went through a book with the different steps in arithmetic. And grammar.
Were they fairly strict with you, or?
Yeah. You weren't supposed to whisper.
Oh.
No whispering. The teacher could penalize you for whispering, make you come up and sit in the front.
Oh.
With your face to the blackboard.
Oh. Would you put one of those hats on?
No, they didn't do that. Or make you stay after school and write so many words over and over, which was ridiculous. And the teacher had to stay too. But the teachers always had to stay in the country schools because they had to sweep the floor, clean the blackboard, and get the room ready for the next day.
They pretty much ran the whole show.
Oh,
for
sure.
Keeping the school going.
They did, and they were always important in the neighborhood too. Everybody looked up to the teacher. You were somebody.
That had some prestige.
Yes, it did. Oh, yes. That was very much different than it is now, from the way I hear they treat teachers. You had to be pretty poor, a pretty bad teacher, to not be able to get a school. But they hired them from year to year. The school, they always had a school board, and if they didn't want to rehire them, they didn't. They looked for somebody better.
Did you decide to be a teacher for those reasons, and because you yourself had loved school so much?
I just looked up to the role of teacher. I thought it was a job with some prestige, I guess. I thought it was a very, prestigious job. Well, you were looked upon in that light.
You were respected.
Yes, and the neighborhood treated you that way. So the young men.
Now, when you decided to your mother wanted you to go to college.
Sure.
But you had to wait for Catherine to catch up with you? Is that?
Well, Catherine wasn't well. Well, she was only a year behind me. She I was the dumbest one in the family because I was almost 14. I was 14 before I got into high school. All the rest, Catherine was only 13, and Irene, I think she had to go to high school when she was 12. In fact, they sent her to a private school. And Grace was ahead, too. Grace went in when she was about 12 or 13. I was, as somebody said, you were the only dumb one in the family. So but I had to set the pace for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see, when we went to high school, the second year I went, Catherine went too, so that's when we began to room rent, where we did our own housekeeping. Catherine was sick a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother kind of looked to me to look after her,
Mm-hmm.
which I did.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with when it came time to go to. I taught school 3 years, and I wanted to go to college. Well, Catherine,
You taught school 3 years before you went to college.
I taught 4 years.
Oh.
The 3 years I wanted to go to college. Well, Catherine had been sick a lot, and Mother wanted her to go to college too, and she was
Mm-hmm.
qualified.
Uh-huh.
And but she said, if you'll wait another year so that Catherine can be with you,
Uh-huh.
she said I would like it that way. That wait another year until she's
Uh-huh.
more able to go. So I did. I taught another year, and then we went together. And I did have to help her along quite a bit. I shouldn't say that out loud, but
Mm-hmm. So your first job teaching school was straight out of high school?
no, I went to summer school
Oh.
for the summer. I had to get a certificate. So I went to Superior. After I went out from high school, I graduated in June, and I went to Superior that summer. It was a normal school then, which is supposed to be preparing you for teaching.
And that was in the town of Superior?
Yes.
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was there all summer. Oh, it was the hottest summer. 1910 was supposed to be the hottest summer
Oh.
ever, and it was.
Was that when Halley's Comet came the last time?
That's what they say. And I